Get your stinking rat out. It's Late Night Large.
Welcome to the show that never rings the doorbell when it can smash your back doors in, Late Night Large. With an axe to grind is me, Aaron Bliss, and stuck in the cat flap is Mike Large.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
How you doing, Aaron? All right?
You right, sweetheart? Yeah, I'm good.
Right, sweetheart.
Yeah, not too bad. We're recording this on the hottest day of the year, I believe. We're here. We're queer. We don't want any more bears on the last bank holiday in May. Hottest day of the year. For some people, it's like not hot enough, if you ask me. Other people are like, oh my god, it's like the surface of the sun. But it actually wasn't too bad. And the most important thing is, yes, it's hot and toasty outside, but hopefully when we come home, it's a bit cooler, and at night time the temperature plunges enough for us to have a nice comfy sleep. So, without further ado, welcome everyone to Lockdown Large, another Lockdown Large, as we're about to enter the summer months. And at time of recording, we are a mere 3 weeks from the summer solstice. And you know what that means? Do you remember what that means, Mike?
Enlighten us. Enlighten us with your nonsense. Go on.
It was, well, obviously, it's supposed to be the initial final stage of unlocking the summer solstice, 21st of June. So that's what we were looking forward to. Well, some of us knew better that there would be spanners to be thrown in certain works before then. And of course, we will be debating that mainly next week, I guess, because tonight's show is mainly dealing with chewing the fat about the sometimes hilarious, sometimes horrifying testimony from Dominic Cummings. Remember him, Mr Magoo of Barnard Castle, his appearance at the Select Committee. And without being too cynical, you would suggest that the reason that Mr Cummings appeared at this Select Committee when he normally treats them with contempt is that he wants to get his evidence in before the inquiry attempts to throw him under the bus. So, first of all, Mike, obviously, Big DC, Big Dom, he spent the best part of, I believe, 7 hours talking to the Select Committee. Have you ever been in any kind of meeting that's taken you 7 hours?
No, I don't think so.
I would imagine if you were, say, fighting for your reputation, you probably would be happy to stay for 7 hours to just get everything out, stitch up whoever you could on the way. And boy, was there a lot of stitching up to be had. Now, you've probably, anyone who's listening to this, it's been a little while. It's been around the media for a while. We're sorry, it kind of broke just after we'd recorded the last one. So this is the next time we got to congregate and talk about it. But it's always good to debate these things because there's just a lot of fun. And you may have heard about this already, but Dominic Cummings didn't really pull any punches on his old boss, Boris Johnson. But the person who he didn't just have the pants down of, but went in dry on repeatedly, was Matt Hancock, who you may remember that we've referred to on previous shows as a little worm of a man who's effectively been gaslighting the public, filling his own pockets with NHS money, pretending he himself is some kind of doctor or nurse, saying that he is personally saving lives. He has this massive kind of messiah complex for such a weedy and pathetic little specimen. But I almost felt sorry for him, the way that Dominic Cummings just tore him 2 or 3 new arseholes. And that's what we're gonna try and go through tonight, Mike. Can I ask, did you watch any of the Select appearance clips yourself, or did you just read about it?
Yeah, seen a couple of clips, and obviously read about them. I think for me, now, like you say, the reason, or a cynic may say, the reason big DC's come out and when he has is, like you say, to get his to have his say before he's thrown under the bus. Now, I'm cynics will say what they will about it, and he's just bitter or whatever, and I don't know. He did have a lot to say, didn't he? I mean, are we really going to suggest that? Because people will try, but are we really going to suggest that there's no foundation to anything that he's coming out with or has said? Any of the revelations that he's kind of thrown out there that most of us probably suspected a little bit anyway? And
well, some of it's on the public record, isn't it? Really. So
yeah.
on that subject, Mike, before we really get down to the nitty gritty of the most explosive things he came out with.
Yeah.
Me and Mike, just to be clear, we are not saying that Mr Magoo of Barnard Castle is a trustworthy person generally. We are not saying he's a hero, that he's crusading for justice, or that we believe every single word he says without equivocation. We're not saying any of those things. The guy is a twat. He took us all for mugs with his Durham trip, and then lying about it, and then lying about it again, and then lying till he was blue in the face in the Rose Garden when he was asked to explain his ridiculous trip. Although, before we go into the stuff he accused other people of, Mike, it might be interesting to go back on something he said about himself in the select committee. Okay. Right? Are you
talking... Oh, sorry. Are you talking about his... when you say the stuff he's saying about himself, are you talking about how he said he probably shouldn't have had the job? Is that where you were going?
No, I wasn't initially, but we can go on to that.
Okay, no, go on. Sorry, carry on then. As you were.
You can follow on. So, no, what I was going to say was the first thing that he said about himself, not the first thing, one of the major things he said about himself was related to Barnard Castle. So, he said that he couldn't say for some reason at the time, you kind of raised an eyebrow and were like, what was the reason you didn't say at the time? So he revealed new information about the Barnard Castle trip. No, there still wasn't any relevant explanation as to why he went to a beauty spot on his wife's birthday, sticking with the testing his eyesight bullshit. But what he did say is, going up to Durham in the first place, apparently one of the major reasons that causes that spurred him to do that, as well as the obvious of being struck down with COVID and wanting to get to his parents in case of whatever. I don't know if you heard this, Mike. He said there were security concerns at his London place. As in, I mean, I don't think he even made specifics. So you assume that he'd had threats, maybe, that people had knew where he lived. The usual thing, I guess, for people in public life.
Well, I think the ambiguity of that is typical of someone who works in and around politics, isn't it?
Yeah. And the thing that I didn't particularly like about that was, I mean, that could be so easily refuted. I do not doubt for a second that Dominic Cummings probably had people threatening him. But I don't understand why he couldn't just have the same guard privileges that other major members of the cabinet have, if they've been given threats. So why were they not, the Metropolitan Police? Why were they not guarding his London residence? It seems to me it seemed to be something he casually threw in, hoping that I'll throw them this bone and then they'll stop going on about Barnard Castle. Because the more they go on about Barnard Castle, the more I start to look like I'm really untrustworthy and I'm just trying to save my own neck. If I say I was being threatened, maybe they'll kind of think, well, that seems plausible. And then suddenly I've got a bit of sympathy for when I'm, giving the real stuff.
Well, yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? I think he had to maybe at least allude to it and say something to try and gain a little bit of credibility for the other stuff that he was going to come out with. You know, if you're going to make the kind of claims that he'd made about other people, you kind of need to do that from a position where people actually will, or at least willing to listen to a word that comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, rather than think this is probably spiteful bastard.
Exactly. So he probably felt like, well, I'm going to have to cover this off and try and gain a bit of credibility, or at least enough to come up with an excuse that hasn't been heard before, and that people probably will at least buy for now while they listen to the other stuff I'm saying. So, and that probably was where he was going with that.
Right. Also, the other thing, Mike, that really irritates me about the media and also the select committee, right? So the Barnard Castle thing, the one thing that really irritates me, right, is because again, I mean, maybe the select committee is not the right place. I guess I'm really talking about the media. So I don't know about you, but to me, journalism is about finding the truth, right? Would you not think that was what I mean by finding the truth is if you are a journalist and you are interviewing a political figure, your job is either to get them to speak the truth as a plausible truth, or for them to squirm so much that it becomes apparent to the audience what the truth actually is without getting them to say it themselves. What it isn't is asking them a question, they give you an answer, and you just take them at face value immediately. Because when you ask Dominic Cummings about the Barnard Castle and you say, why were you driving 30 miles in Durham when you suspect you had COVID? Why did you not drive straight home? And then he gives the reason as, you know, my eyesight had been a bit funny, and basically I was taking an eyesight test to make sure I was okay to drive. Now, I understand that journalists can't immediately come out and go, well, that sounds like a lie. But you know what you do is you kind of playfully mock them. So what you should say to follow up with that is, that sounds like a rather fanciful story. You know, the thing is, Mr. Cummings, some people suggested that perhaps you went to Barnard Castle because it was your wife's birthday and it was a nice beauty spot, and maybe you wanted to have a walk around a beauty spot to celebrate her birthday before you drove home. That's not right, is it? And then, you know, he could flat out deny that, but you've already planted the seed to say, listen, most people know you just went there for your wife's birthday because you thought the rules didn't apply to you and you thought you could get away with it. You know, come up with this cock and bull story, but most people know that that's not the case, right? And he'll flat out, no, that's not the case. But at least you've said, you know, you've given the people at home the credibility to say, listen, we know what you're all thinking, and we've told him that this is what everyone thinks. Do you know what I mean? So that's like a halfway house. So you're not accusing him outright of lying, but you're saying like, well, a lot of people think this is a more plausible story, Mr. Cummings.
So, okay, so why do you think that didn't happen?
Well, I mean, it's probably too much to talk about on tonight's show. I mean, most of the media are effectively what we would call client journalists, which is just to regurgitate what the government say uncritically most of the time. You could argue that's been mostly true in the past. I don't think it's ever been worse than it is now. You could get the average person on social media, an influencer on social media, who would probably question politicians more effectively than the majority of television and newspapers at the moment. Anyway, what were you saying about what were you referring to with
I forget now
about himself? I mean,
okay. No, sorry, yeah.
Go on. Yeah,
no,
go on.
All I was going to say is I thought that you were perhaps referring to the part where he said basically he wasn't fit for the job. There are people like more qualified than him that should have been in that role.
Oh, referring to himself.
Yeah.
Obviously
he said that about other people as well.
Yes, he did. Yeah. No, that it's a good point. I wasn't thinking of that at the time, but Dominic Cummings, and we know, if there's one thing we know about Dominic Cummings, he has a huge ego. He thinks he's like some kind of super forecasting god, whatever. So to hear him both describe himself as someone who was incapable of being at the top of government, but also the other thing that I was actually quite impressed with, and this was one time I dropped my cynicism just a little. Did you hear when he personally apologized to the families of dead people? I thought, whatever else we think about him, and the guy's a twat and he's a snake and he's potentially ruined this country for generations, but credit where credit's due, he didn't do the politician thing. I'm sorry if people were hurt. You know, he said, I'm really sorry to all the families of people, you know, the families of people who they've lost because of some of the decisions that were made. You know, I take my part in the responsibility for that. So fair play to him. You know, we can slag people off for being, you know, stupid, greedy people, but if they do something that's actually, you know, worthy of crediting, then we should call them out. So fair play to Dominic Cummings. He did personally apologise for his part in the tens of thousands of people he said, I think he said his own words, had needlessly died. So I gave him a little bit of credit for that.
Do you think that all of the stuff like that and stuff, how he you know, questioned his own kind of credibility and his own right to be in the position that he was in, etc. Do you think he kind of just said that to kind of soften people up so that they would absorb a little bit more of the other stuff that he was saying about other people?
This is why I said I had to drop my cynicism a bar. But that did go in the back of my mind. I thought, do you know what? This is exactly what a mastermind of playing the media would do. They'd make themselves seem very human and vulnerable and like, I make mistakes too, you know, I'll hold my hands up, I'm really sorry about this. And then suddenly, like you say, he could tell all the lies he wants about everyone else involved, and people will look at that and go, well, I know he's got a bit of an axe to grind, but I mean, you know, he said he's sorry and he's admitted these other things. So yeah, he's more of a human that can have more credibility. So yeah, if we've been super cynical, Mike, I think you're right. There's a small possibility that everything he said was very calculated. I think we have to entertain that possibility.
Well, I mean, it was definitely calculated.
No, but I mean, yeah. I mean, every word he said, not just the overarching why he was there. We know that was calculated.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like, I mean, well, no. What I'm saying is, if you're going on a stage like that to make the kind of claims that you're making, everything that you say will be calculated because you will have thought about exactly what you're going to say, the words you're going to use, the order in which you're going to say it. You'd have to. You wouldn't, you know, is he a tosser? Yes. Is he stupid? No. So he's clearly thought about that, do you know what I mean? And rehearsed probably several times.
I think he definitely rehearsed, because if you remember how he spoke in the Rose Garden, he did not. I mean, obviously he was lying, but he was not very good at it at all. You know, if you replaced, you know, we're talking about the Rose Garden where Cummings had to answer for his Barnard Castle trip. If you'd switched Dominic Cummings with Boris Johnson there, the one difference, they'd have probably come up with a similar story, but Boris Johnson wouldn't have skipped a beat because he is an accomplished liar with no sense of shame. He would have just let the lies spill out of his mouth, no compunction, whatever. Dominic Cummings, you know, there were periods when he was and shuffling his paper, massive pauses. So we know that Dominic Cummings lies. I wouldn't necessarily call him a liar. I don't think he lies with everything that comes out of his mouth. I think he lies the way me and you would lie, to protect ourselves, to advance a particular interest at that time. It's not on the level of Johnson, who just lies about literally everything. So I think you're right. I think he must have rehearsed, because there were no long pauses as far as I could see. The time wasting, shuffling of papers. He had a lot to say and he wanted to get it out, and he wouldn't stop talking, like you say, 7 hours. So you're probably right. I think he rehearsed it probably for a couple of days at least. So here we go, Mike. Let's go through some of the substance of what DC came out with. So some of the tastier lines, without going into the people at the moment, some of the tastier lines, remember, this is all related to how the lockdown came about and what was happening during the lockdown period in government. So number one was, he said that Boris Johnson suggested to Chris Whitty that he should inject him with coronavirus live on TV. Now, we can give him a very generous benefit of the doubt and say he was joking when he said that, because there's two options. Either when he said that, he was deadly serious, in which case he is Donald Trump. Like, literally, that's as bad as the bleach thing. So he is Donald Trump. The other alternative is he was saying it tongue in cheek, but he was making it clear he didn't take the virus seriously, which is almost as bad. So that particular accusation about being injected with COVID live on TV, the reason that was such a huge claim was because, like we say, there's only two options if that's the case. One is that Boris Johnson is Donald Trump, so he's not just a liar, but he's thick as pig shit. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing, and he'll say anything to get attention. Or number two, which I think is more likely, is Boris Johnson said that because he likes to say outrageous things for effect with his tongue in his cheek. But by saying that, he clearly means that he doesn't take COVID seriously. So that was one of the big ones. We'll keep going, Mike, and you can comment whenever you feel like. But did you hear the part where I can't remember which, was it a medical advisor or Mark Sedgwick, the cabinet secretary, who suggested that maybe Britain should have chickenpox parties? Do you remember this?
No.
They genuinely, I don't think it was for very long, but I remember at the time they were suggesting it, of chickenpox parties, of doing that with COVID, of having, obviously not vulnerable people, but they were saying the rest of the population, the mostly healthy population, should just basically go around kissing and shagging each other to spread it as far wide as possible, the same way that we get over chickenpox, deliberately give it to other people. So that was another big accusation.
I'd have been game.
I bet you would have. Yeah, well, the way I phrased it, you would be. Yeah. Another big accusation, Mike, that the reason that the borders weren't closed was solely down to Boris Johnson, and implying that the main reason for that was exactly as we suspected, that he was being heavily lobbied by the travel industry, and he apparently said he didn't want to kill the travel industry by being too draconian. So not closing the borders, which is exactly how the Indian variant got in, according to Dominic Cummings. And the thing is, unless that can be disproven, I'm inclined to believe it, because we know Boris Johnson never tells the truth. So at the moment, unless someone categorically disproves what Dominic Cummings has claimed, my opinion, he's accurate. And by the way, he's accurate in another way anyway, because who has responsibility for the borders? There's only two people: Home Secretary, Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister can overrule the Home Secretary. Now, the Home Secretary has told us she wanted to lock the borders down in March. So what does that tell you? We've got two different people, Dominic Cummings and Priti Patel, who both converged on the same answer. It was Boris Johnson alone who refused to close the borders. We had confirmation that Johnson did say, and by the way, not just from Dominic Cummings, I think 4 or 5, I think they said 4 or 5 anonymous sources also confirmed this. So we know now that this is 100% true. Boris Johnson did say the bodies pile high comment. He did say, according to multiple people, was it, I don't know if it was after the second lockdown or when he was being pushed into the second lockdown.
No, it was after. I think it was in between the second and third.
Right, yeah. So in between the second and third lockdown, Boris Johnson made the comment, paraphrasing, after this, there's no more lockdowns. Let the bodies pile high in their thousands. I'm not ordering another lockdown. Effectively, 1 or 2 words may be different. That's what Boris Johnson actually said. So again, that is not a speculation. That is not we're relying on Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings has confirmed something that at least 4 or 5 other anonymous sources have already confirmed. So that is true. We know that is true. Other dynamite testimony, Mike. Okay, I'll throw this over to you. Dominic Cummings was asked, he didn't say it himself, but he was asked the question, do you think Boris Johnson was fit for the job of Prime Minister? And he almost immediately answered no. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to be careful, and you need to differentiate between what he's presenting to us as what would be fact and just what his opinions are.
Yeah.
You know, his opinions, although I was going to say his opinions are not necessarily any more valid than yours or mine, but obviously he is and was certainly much more informed on these things. And
yeah,
so his opinion probably would count for more, obviously, but opinion isn't fact. But unless, of course, it's my opinion, in which case it may as well be fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I mean, I'd say he was also he would have been very prepared for that question as well. There's no way that he was going to go there and not be asked that question, especially with what he knew he was coming out with.
Yeah.
It was inevitable. So yes, he answered very quickly, and he was very sure of himself. It sounded very sure of himself, and yeah, you and I can see why. We'd probably answer exactly the same way if we were asked the same question. I think that I'm not sure you can read too much into that, though. I mean, I don't know what you think, but
no. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I don't get excited that Dominic Cummings says something that we all know. Like, it's not a big deal to me that he thinks he's unfit for high office. It's like you say, as you say so well, it's slightly more valid than mine or Mike's opinions, because the guy has worked in the presence, the close proximity of Boris Johnson for a number of weeks. So, you know, for that reason, it's valid. But yeah, it didn't add much. The fact that Boris Johnson is not fit to be Prime Minister, I don't think is gobsmacking. But some of the other things that he said about Boris Johnson, Mike, that off the top of my head, because I don't think I've written all of these down, but from what I'm thinking, some of the things he said about Boris Johnson. So he said he accused him of not being able to make a decision and changing policy based on Telegraph headlines. Did you hear that? Which again sounded a lot like Donald Trump watching Fox News and changing his opinions. You know, there's a lot of echoes here. But the problem with that is, because anyone watching this might think, oh, you know, what exactly does this have to do with lockdown? Well, the reason this is relevant to lockdown is because the Tory graph writes for the wealthy and more affluent parts of society who generally vote and donate to the Conservative Party, hence the nickname the Tory graph. Boris Johnson used to write for the Telegraph. He was employed by them before he was Prime Minister. Therefore, there is a symbiosis there. And the problem is that the Tory graph recently, because it's owned by a couple of shady tax evading characters called the Barclay brothers, and it's very recently become very lockdown skeptic. Now, we can be cynical and say, do they really believe in everyone's personal liberties, or is it because they're owned by very rich people who don't want people to be able to stay at home instead of going to work and paying their rents, etc.? So we know kind of why the Telegraph is a lockdown skeptic. But the thing is, the Telegraph were, during this pandemic, one of the main culprits in spreading misinformation about lockdowns, their effects, and generally bringing in lockdown skeptic doctors and whichever other dregs they could, you know, put in front of a microphone to record their story about why these lockdowns are more damaging than just leaving everyone to do what they want. But Boris Johnson was reading those headlines, and apparently, and I don't know if this went through Boris Johnson, but it's been stated that Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, was inviting lockdown skeptic scientists into Downing Street to advise them. So when you hear stuff like that, you know, this is not just normal politicking. This is inviting dangerous kind of basically nut jobs to advise on serious government reaction to a pandemic. So that's
Doesn't sound great.
no, it doesn't. Does it?
I'm trying to think what, because obviously you were saying about stuff that Cummings actually said about Bojo, or that he's. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that he said specifically about him.
There was the other story.
He made a comment about what he referred to it as. He said Boris said or referred to it as just a new swine flu.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That was something.
I missed that. You're right. Yeah. That kind of ties in with what we said earlier about the injection on live TV. The fact he referred to it as. Oh, did you hear the accusation as well that he referred to it as Kung Flu? I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise any of us to hear that he thought that was funny. But that was exactly what Donald Trump got in big trouble for. And the idea that he would use the same term.
I'm not sure about that one. But and then again, I've said I'm not sure about a lot of the stuff that Dominic Cummings has now come out and said, no, that did happen. No, that is true. So
maybe
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think even with proven liars, we need to give them a chance. You know, something strong needs to come out. Now, I'm not sure anyone else has confirmed whether Boris Johnson used the term Kung Flu. Now, by the way, I should just say I also find that term very funny. But for a public official to say that, it is anti-Chinese. It's blatantly anti-Chinese to call it Kung Flu. To have a member of the government, the Prime Minister, use that terminology, you know, it tells you that he's fit to be a clown, but not a Prime Minister. So, but we don't know exactly. We haven't had any corroborating evidence other than Dominic Cummings. So, despite the fact that this is why Cummings' accusations land so much, I think, is because we can all imagine that Johnson would say something like that. That's why it's so plausible. But like you say, we can't just immediately say, oh, he said this, he said that. The things we know he said is because it's been in the news and or we have other sources other than Dominic Cummings. Okay, so I'm trying to think of what else he said about Bojo. There was that story about his girlfriend's dog, wasn't there? That Dominic Cummings accused Carrie Simmons of wasting civil servant's time in the press team for trying to lobby to change a story that she was about to give her rescue dog away on the same day that Johnson was being pressured by Trump to bomb Iraq, and something else was happening. And it was just, you know, the way Cummings talks about it just sounds like, you know, one of those clown car situations, just people just continuously tumbling out of the clown car. It was so ridiculous. So I mean, the thing is, Mike, out of those things, we've got some serious accusations that we know happen. We can't prove the Kung Flu. We can't prove a couple of other things. What we can prove, or that we do know now, is that Boris Johnson did say the bodies pile high comment, that he alone was responsible for the borders not being properly closed, or at least monitored to the extent that they should have been. And I think that's about it. So those are the only concrete things. The other things we can imagine him saying, but of course we don't know for certain because we've only heard it from Dominic Cummings. And Dominic Cummings has an axe to grind. So, you know, when you're doing a murder inquiry, you have to look at motive. Dominic Cummings has a very strong motive to be saying these things because it makes him look better. But those things have been proven. Now, Mike, let's move on to the guy that he absolutely obliterated, Matthew Hancock, or Wanksock, as we've come to lovingly refer him.
Well, I think what I would say just before So obviously, I'm making you all like to get his teeth stuck into this one. And to be honest, I don't like the bloke either. But it's worth noting that I don't. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they've ever really got on, have they?
Possibly not. No.
Cummings and Hancock. I'm sure
No,
that I've seen somewhere.
Yeah, I think you're right to bring that up. So that what Mike is saying is, again, there's a very strong motive for Cummings to have a personal vendetta, let's say, against Matt Hancock. But as we will go into, he also said things about Matt Hancock that we now know to be true because they are corroborated by other evidence or other parties. So the most dynamite line, which either cracked everyone up or had their jaw like open like this, was when he just out of the blue came out with the Secretary of State for Health should have been fired 15 to 20 times for different things. And I think everyone was just like, there was a collective gasp, because bear in mind that these select committees, you've heard about it. You can't accuse other ministers of lying in the House of Commons, even when they do it, obviously, like Johnson. You can't do it because you're called honourable. The members are all honourable. They're deemed to be honourable unless they are dishonourable, i.e. they commit a criminal offence. So you cannot do that. And in select committees, it's usually the same kind of decor. You can, say nasty things about people, but the idea that you would come out and say they should have been fired multiple times. And then it got worse. It got worse from there for Wangsock, because he went down the line of, so could you elaborate on effectively, well, why would you say that he should have been fired 15 to 20 times? And the biggest things that he came out with were serial dishonesty, not just to the public, but to ministers in the cabinet. So he was literally saying that Matt Hancock didn't just lie to the public, as the old saying goes that almost every government official lies to the public once in a while. He actually lied to his own cabinet ministers. Now, the one thing you do not do is lie to your own cabinet ministers. They're probably all cunts as well. They're all filling their own pockets, whatever. You do not lie to them. Priti Patel, who is absolutely bulletproof, she can get away with bullying people, losing police records, being a nasty fucking piece of shit. But the one thing she cannot get away with is lying to the Prime Minister. She did it to Theresa May. She lost her job. Look at the stuff she's got away with now. Oh, that's because it's the public and it's the civil service. The one thing you don't do is lie to your own ministers. Now, that accusation that Hancock lied to his own ministers, that is absolute dynamite. And if that was, effectively proved, I don't see how he could continue. Like you say, you have to choose the people you lie to. What do you think about it, mate?
Well, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because when you're playing that sort of game, with the best intentions in the world, at some point you're going to end up lying to someone. You just are. We all do it from time to time, don't we? In lives, we tell little white lies, or we tell people what we think they need to hear at that moment for an easy life. But when these people should be held to a higher standard.
Of course, that's why they're called honourable, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm talking about lying. Full stop. Really. With these people, Hancock, etc. Now, well, I suppose it's difficult, isn't it? Because you'd say, well, there's no honour among thieves, but as in they're all liars. Why wouldn't they lie to each other? But you're right. You need to provide like a unified kind of. You need to be on the same page. You can't lie to each other when you're in one of those positions. Like you say, you need to. If you're going to lie to the public, if you're going to lie to other people, then fine. But at least have a unified lie, a load of bullshit that you all agreed to come out with, and this is what we're spinning. This is the lie we're going to spin. This is the truth that we're going to they're going to run with, and this is how. I think it's a very dangerous game when you start lying to each other internally. And, well, I mean, you could argue that this sort of thing is the result of that, isn't it? This is why it's a dangerous game. You can't have a well-run government. You can't have a unified government that all appear to be on the same page if you're lying to each other. And I think that's what you were saying there, how it's like, you know, almost a cardinal sin. You can lie to who you want, but you don't lie to the other ministers, because you need at least these people to have your back. Don't lie to them.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? It's similar to it's similar to if you're in the mob. You know, if you're in the mob, you'll get away with kind of murdering or attacking most people, but don't mess with the boss. If you start shitting on your own doorstep, it's going to come back to haunt you. Anyway, so
I think that's what's happened, isn't it?
Yeah. So he says Hancock should have been fired for at least 15 to 20 things, right? So here's some of the putting the meat on the bones of some of these accusations of being sacked 15 to 20 times. Cummings claimed that Hancock displayed criminal, disgraceful behaviour as he held back coronavirus tests and meddled in efforts to build a mass testing system in order to meet a stupid pledge of 100,000 tests per day in April 2020. Did you hear about that, Mike? That specific accusation so basically, in layman's terms, the NHS were trying to build a functioning track and trace, and the accusation from Cummings is that Hancock deliberately intervened to slow down the process and confuse people by diverting resources to areas where it would make him look personally better, i.e. the 100,000 tests, which, as we know, he then just fiddled the figures with. He claimed that ones that had been posted out were actually results, and some of them were counted twice. So he already had to lie and do little accounting fraud to make that plausible anyway. He doesn't mince his words. Criminal, disgraceful behaviour, he describes it as. And here's the big one: lied during meetings held in the Downing Street cabinet room, including, and this is the big one. This is the one we have to get to the bottom of, about testing people for coronavirus before they were discharged back into care homes. Now, this is the smoking gun, because the inquiry needs to start as soon as possible, because Hancock is 99% certain that he is responsible for this, but we need the inquiry to be certain. So the care home fiasco, we know what happened. It was compared to the siege of Kaffa, where they used to catapult diseased cattle over the castle walls to spread disease inside the castle. That's how you killed your enemy. And that was what this was compared to. We were discharging people from hospital who were still sick and not giving them proper COVID tests. So you were sending how many positive COVID patients into enclosed spaces with some of the most vulnerable elderly people in the country. And that's known to have killed, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people through that ridiculous decision. Now, the question that needs to be answered, obviously, is who made the decision not to test them? Now, we're almost certain it's Matt Hancock, because he's the minister responsible. So if he's not the minister responsible, there's an even bigger problem, because somebody has got interfered in something that was the health secretary's responsibility, right? So ultimately, it's up to Matt Hancock. Either, again, you know, people find this stuff complicated. It's not. There's only two explanations about the discharging of sick people into care homes. There's two explanations. Number one is that Matt Hancock lied. He told the cabinet and the ministers and the prime minister, whoever else, he told them he was testing people to make sure they didn't have COVID before returning them to care homes to free up hospital beds. That's number one, in which case he is a disgrace. He's lied to his own ministers. I personally think he should have criminal charges. And then there's only one other explanation. The only other explanation is he thought, no, they must be tested. We have to know. We're not going to send sick people back. So that means someone has overruled his decision. A civil servant, hospital boss. But that is potentially more serious, not more serious necessarily for Hancock, although it's very serious for his authority.
More worrying.
Yeah. Mike, am I missing something? Because to me, that's the only two explanations for that situation. Is there another one I'm not imagining?
Probably the most plausible.
Yeah.
I think.
Otherwise, you're going into conspiratorial levels, aren't you?
You are, but sometimes we flirt with that line anyway. But yeah, you know how it is. They've heard us for long enough. But no, I do think that is a huge concern. And you're right. The sooner the inquest starts, and obviously then is concluded, the better, because you can't. Something has gone horribly wrong.
Yes.
And we need to know sooner rather than later. It's not about having someone to lynch them up and having someone to point the finger at. It's not necessarily about that. It's hang on. Is whatever has caused this monumental kind of fuck up, this issue that has cost lives, is that something that can happen again?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if we don't know,
it's not about it's not about destroying or protecting people's careers. It's about preventing it ever happening again.
Exactly, which is why we need to know.
Yeah, and even Cummings himself made a very good point, which is like the inquiry needs to happen now. It needs to happen as soon as reasonably possible, not next year, now, because the more time that passes, the more documents get lost, the more recollection drifts away out of people's memories of conversations and documents that they saw. Obviously that's what Johnson's counting on. We know that. But hopefully Cummings' testimony has focused minds on that, because whatever else, if you ever listen to us and you think we talk shit, you agree with some of what we say, don't agree with others, I think I get your mindset. I think you're thinking, I don't think the government's done a good job, but could anyone have done much better in terms of the lives lost? Now, let me tell you, the biggest answer to that question, because everything else can kind of be indirect, like, when you say, oh, we locked down too late and whatever, although to me that's quite concrete, to other people that's quite abstract, like, well, people could still have been responsible, you can't always blame the government. That falls down on the care homes. The care homes is a concrete action taken by a government decision. We just need to find out how that happened. Did Matt Hancock make that decision and then lie to cabinet? Or did Matt Hancock do the right thing and then one of his civil servants or a group of them or everyone went renegade and did the opposite of what he asked? So that's what we need to find out.
Silly question. What do you think happened?
Yeah, but I'd only be speculating, wouldn't I?
Of course you would.
No, honestly, I'm not 100% certain. I would be 98% certain, let's say, that Cummings this time is actually telling the truth. I think Matt Hancock is a liar.
Well, we know he's a liar.
No, we know he's capable of lies. The difference, though, isn't there? Me and you can lie, doesn't make us liars. Liars are people who lie in situations where it's not even necessarily advantageous to them, or they struggle to discern the truth even when the truth is easier than lying. Johnson's an obvious case, but I think the difference between Johnson and Hancock, the way I see it, Mike, is Johnson cannot stop lying. It's like a tick that he has. I think it's just no, but it just flows out of him. It's just natural. I don't think he even knows whether he's telling lies anymore. Hancock is different. To me, Hancock lies because he is a coward, and he's always lying to evade the potential that something will come back and hurt him. So if you notice that he tends to lie when he's under pressure, he lies when he talks about testing figures, when he's got a hard question. This accusation that he's lied to cabinet would be because he was under immense pressure. Do you know what I mean? He's what I'd call a cowardly liar. Whereas Johnson will just as happily lie when there's no benefit to him. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe. Okay.
You know,
okay. I see
what I'm trying to say is everyone accuses politicians of lying all the time, and the reason why they accuse them of lying is basically because they're trying to evade accountability and enrich themselves. Now, Matt Hancock would fall into that category, so he is an archetypal politician. Boris Johnson, on the other hand, is, despite doing the same things, I would say he is a very successful politician in the cynical sense of politician. If you talk about politician as being successful in driving forward your movement and your ideology, whether it's through, you know, personality worship or whatever, you are a successful politician. But the downside of being a successful politician is the ones that lie, cheat, stab anyone in the back to preserve their careers. And to me, that's Matt Hancock. I don't know. What do you think? No? Anyway, yeah, so other massive bombshells about Hancock particularly. Cummings claimed that he used the UK's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, and the medical advisor, Chris Whitty, as a shield for government failings. I presume he's referring to the fact that he would keep referring to following the science, i.e. the science is to blame, not government ministers. This is a good one, Mike. Cummings and the UK's then most senior civil servant, Sir Mark Sedwill, recommended to the Prime Minister that Hancock be sacked in April 2020. Now, I don't know if you heard this. I think the words he used were, Mark Sedwill is accused of saying, and bear in mind Cummings has a lot of brass neck, because he's accusing a senior civil servant of saying these words. Now, civil servants are known as straight down the line. They are the opposite of politicians. They're supposed to be straight as a die. They will always tell the truth and they will always be honest. So if Dominic Cummings says that Sir Mark Sedwill said these words, then Cummings is either being the biggest troll in the world, or he knows that Mark Sedwill can't deny them. So Mark Sedwill is alleged to have said to Boris Johnson that I think he said the civil service is not set up to cope with a minister who is serially dishonest in meetings. I'm paraphrasing a little, but that's exactly the intent of what he said. He effectively said, or implied or outright stated, that the government could not function with ministers who serially lie basically to their colleagues, referring to Matt Hancock.
Yeah, well, that's like what we said before, isn't it?
Yeah, so
they
that's
can,
more evidence.
They will. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's more evidence of what we were discussing earlier, to say that he has made a big mistake if he's actually lied to his own ministers. To save his own skin.
They can and they will lie to people, but they have to draw a line somewhere. At some point, they have to actually go, right, forget what we're, the united front that we're going to put out, the story we're going to put out, the truth that we're going to, unveil. What are we have to be clear. What are the facts? What is happening? What is, the truth? And if you're lying to each other, not only are you going to run the country ineffectively, but you're also going to trip over your own lies as a government. You at least have to be reading from the same hymn sheet, and I think that's what he was saying, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah.
Even if that hymn sheet is a load of bollocks, it has to be the same one.
Yeah. Do you? And the other major thing that he said about Matt Hancock, which I thought was a very good thing to add, because it focused people's minds, which was, it said that the reason that Matt Hancock was kept in post was because because he was deemed to be the first fall guy from the inquiry that Boris Johnson would sacrifice. So after accusing Matt Hancock of unforgivable cowardice, that would be unforgivable cowardice from a prime minister who is more concerned with saving his own back than he is about saving the lives of tens of thousands of people, because he's keeping on a health secretary that clearly, like we said before, yes, we wait for the evidence, but the only evidence is either he ordered diseased people into care homes to free up hospital beds because he thought that would make him look better, or some renegade or series of renegades went behind his back and did the opposite of what he asked them to do. So either one of those massive ramificationary explanations that's enough to bring down 3 or 4 ministers. What do you think the consequences are going to be, Mike, for Matt Hancock? Do you think he's going to face any consequences until the inquiry?
Just you're right there.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I think what, before the inquiry? I don't.
Yes, I
think so.
No,
I don't think so. And
he's speaking.
I think it's probably up to him.
He is speaking to the select committee himself, I believe, next week. That'll be interesting, won't it?
I think it'll be up to Hancock himself as to whether he ends up facing any repercussions, etc., before the inquiry. See, it depends entirely on how he wants to play it.
Yeah, you see, this was my thinking, because this becomes a very interesting little game of chess now, because some might think that the reason Dominic Cummings said that Matt Hancock would be the fall guy, the reason he said that was very tactical. And what I mean by tactical is it wasn't so much to tell everyone, oh, Matt Hancock's going to be the fall guy at the inquiry, that's why he wasn't sacked, Boris Johnson, get this guy. It wasn't so much that, it was to put the idea, it was to plant the seed in Matt Hancock's head. So now, Matt Hancock has heard it from Dominic Cummings' testimony that he was due to be the sacrificial lamb when the inquiry hit. So, if you are Matt Hancock now, I feel sorry for anyone who has to be Matt Hancock, but if you are Matt Hancock right now, we know he lies shamelessly, so he'll just do his little, oh yes, I'm off to save lives, and evade questions. We know that. We know he does that Alan Partridge style. But in his head now, he's got the seed in his head. When this inquiry hits, Johnson is just going to throw me on the funeral pyre. Say I was like a renegade minister, or I didn't listen to him, and that's going to be the bonfire of my career. So now, Matt Hancock, for the next however many months before this stupid inquiry finally starts, Matt Hancock is going to have in his head every day, what am I going to do? He's a dead man walking. He knows it. He's been told. He's been told. I mean, if me or you, say you at work, Mike, imagine you overheard a conversation that a couple of higher ups were having saying how they were just waiting until this big project that you were working on was finished because they didn't have anyone else to do it, but they were going to wait till it was finished before telling you you'd lose your job, or be made redundant. I know if you heard that, you would be mulling over that for days and thinking, how am I going to turn this to my advantage? Because I'm not letting them fucking throw me out of the car window kind of thing. So Matt Hancock must be in the same mindset. I mean, we know he's a weasel, but he's a self-preservation weasel. He's all about his own career advancement. He's been told in neon letters, your job will finish in the next 18 months to 2 years. So what does he do? Have you got any suggestions, Mike? What do you think he can do? Is there any way that Hancock can save himself after this? Or any way he could strategically leave government with his reputation enhanced? Or, I don't know.
I mean,
what can he do? What would you do?
Fuck me.
It's really tough, isn't it?
I don't see a way at all where a few years time people look back and go, yeah, Matt Hancock, decent bloke, or yeah, he did a good job, didn't he? I don't think there's that just can't happen. For me, it's about damage limitation.
Yeah.
So how that game of chess you alluded to, how does he play this now? Because I don't think there's going to be there won't be ramifications for him before any inquest unless he chooses to kind of make it that way. I honestly think that if anything happens before, it will be because Matt Hancock himself made it happen, because he felt like that was the lesser of two evils, and if it goes through the inquest is going to be even worse for him than than anything he may do or that may happen before the inquest. So I think it kind of is on him. What's best? What's the best thing to? Because either way, he doesn't come out smelling of roses. That can't happen. So what's the lesser of two evils? What's the best way for him to engineer a situation? Because like you said, self-preservation, that's his thing. And that's not necessarily a negative thing massively in humans, but
no.
It's definitely his kind of higher up his list of priorities than perhaps it should be for a government minister. I'm not sure what the best thing for him to do is, and I'm glad that I'm not in a position because I don't have a fucking clue.
Yeah,
I
think it's possibly the first time I felt deep sympathy for him because he has been given the kiss of death. His career has been given the kiss of death.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, okay.
No, I think that's too much. I don't even think sympathy, to be fair. I kind of
sympathy for the situation, as in thinking.
I don't.
Well, he's earned it.
I look at it and I think, good luck. See what happens. I honestly, I don't care what happens to the guy.
No. Do you know something I just thought of, Mike? It's a real tragedy that, do you know, in the past when the honourable people in the House of Commons were relatively honourable generally, there was a time when if you were given a brief as head of a department, first of all, it was an honour and not a stepping stone. It was like I need to show what I can do on this brief. But the idea was, you would do the brief to the best of your ability. You try and put your projects in. Have the whole department running a certain way, right? And the idea was you would run it as best you could, because either you would get promoted because they'd look at your department and go, fucking hell, you're doing well, son. I'm really impressed with that. How do you think you could handle, this higher position? Maybe we should move you up, But the other thing was, in times of a pandemic or something, you'd get your head down, you'd give your best performance, and if you lost your position, you'd be like, I did it honourably, I did the best I could in the circumstances. Matt Hancock seems to have gone the exact opposite way. Do you know what I mean? There's no thinking of I'm doing the best I can. There's, hold on, I'm not certain of a directorship at a private healthcare company yet. I need to keep clinging on in this job to make some more contacts. And it's like he's doing almost the worst job imaginable, but his first thought is, I have to hold on to this job. Does that make any sense? Like that weird inverted thinking compared to ministers in the past, I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean. But like you say, self-preservation, that's a game. It shouldn't surprise us.
I mean, to be fair to him, if you're talking about, so say we're talking about self-preservation, like you say, Mike, which he is the master of, I'm going to admit, Matt Hancock is possibly the finest example of it. And when I say finest, I mean top performing, not finest in any way of honor, because he's a very cowardly creature. And the reason that I say that is because if you remember, he was health secretary under Theresa May, and then Boris Johnson became prime minister when Matt Hancock was running against him as potential leader. And he even said that proroguing Parliament, would be like denying the sacrifices of the soldiers on the beaches of Normandy or something. And then literally Boris Johnson becomes prime minister and prorogues Parliament, and Matt Hancock's like, I think it's the right thing to do. Like, do you know what I mean? He's like a jellyfish. There's no spine there. There's no testicles. He will say anything for self-preservation. Like you said, he's the great survivor. He's the tachyderm, whatever they're called. It's like nothing will blow him off course. He will drop his trousers at a wedding. He'll, wank into the coffin at a funeral. He'll do whatever it takes. Just tell him that you'll give him a big job and you'll keep it, or you'll keep him in his big job, and he will debase himself.
Yeah. So you're a fan then?
Oh, huge fan. Well, you just opened me up with saying how much of a fan you were of Matt Wanksock. But
yeah.
Speaking of Boris Johnson, a couple of more really funny things that Cummings mentioned about him. Did you hear about him saying the problem with Boris Johnson is he changes his mind 10 times a day, and he's like a shopping trolley crashing from one side of the aisle to the other? Did you hear that?
Yeah. I can imagine you, especially like actually picturing that as you were hearing it. I can see you now. I can see you listening to that. I can just, because it does, doesn't it? It does. He's used the right language there, hasn't he?
He's very good at evocative metaphors. That's very good.
Yeah, he's done a good job because we can all picture it, can't we?
We can. It's like he used the metaphor because we know how bumbling he is, bumbling and clumsy, and it's like, what's bumbling and clumsy? This is a good one. Did you hear as well? He was like, he kept talking about, he made movie references all the time. Like he was talking about Independence Day, talking about a Jeff Goldblum scene in Independence Day, and then there was another one where he said it was like the Spider-Man meme where all the Spider-Mans are pointing at each other, but it was everyone in government.
Yeah.
So that was pretty amazing.
I think that's trying to make it more relatable to Joe public that are going to end up hearing this.
Well, what I thought when I heard that was, first of all, like, Cummings is a bit old to be quoting like meme culture, and then I thought, no, what he's doing, like you say, is he's very good at communicating to any kind of popular audience, which is obviously why he won Brexit. I mean, obviously, he was only promoting massive lies, but he knew how to sloganize them. He knew how to present them in a way that was attractive to people. So he does have certain gifts. So, Mike,
Indeed.
finally,
Yes.
unless you can remember
Yeah.
anything else pertinent from the Cummings testimony, where do you think we go from here? Does this have any effect on Boris Johnson other than adding to his poll rating?
I don't think it has any effect on Boris. I think all it'll do is make him think. It'll make him think, okay, do I don't know, it might end up having an effect. Don't get me wrong, but
You mean after the inquiry?
Well, yeah. Or before. But again, it'll be on it's whether, much like Hancock, for Bojo, it'll be a right. So come out with this, and this. Do I tackle this particular issue, this thing he said, this problem? Do I get this out of the way before the inquiry? Is it beneficial for me to do that, or do I let the inquiry sort it out? And or do I just ignore it and bury my head in the sand and hope for the best?
We know
All
which
of these
one he tends
options
to
we
do.
can see him doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right. He could, like you say, he could crash from one to the other, like a shopping.
Yeah, and this is the thing with inquiry imminent as well. Nobody's necessarily going to force Boris to deal with anything he said.
Mm.
He'll force. You know, his hand may have been forced in some way, shape, or form, because he's going to have to think about it now. He's going to have to think about, right, what fires have been started here, or which fires have had fuel added to them. Which ones would it be beneficial for me to get and put out sooner rather than later?
Yeah.
And which ones should I just leave ablaze for a while?
Yeah.
And he may decide that actually he needs to now deal with some of this before an inquiry. But what Cummings has done is he's much like Hancock with Bojo. He's forcing him to make a decision. He's forcing him to think about, okay, how do I deal with this now? Like I say, is this something I have to now come out and actually directly address and deal with and get to the bottom of, or whatever it might be? Or, you know, how confident am I that the inquiry is going to... Do you see what I mean? It's
exonerate him, really, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but...
Would you say, Mike, I mean, you know, we obviously we're also going to say there's major questions to be answered about the sourcing of PPE and stuff, and why it wasn't sorted properly, cronyism, etc. But to me, the two biggest dynamite accusations that were made by Cummings, which we again have established are almost certain to be true, are that Matt Hancock deliberately made the decision to discharge COVID patients directly into care homes without testing, thereby effectively corporate manslaughtering thousands of people. And the other big thing is Boris Johnson refusing to close the borders, because that's brought new variants in, helped the spread. Now, if we ignore the PPE, because, you know, people can make all kinds of excuses about the PPE. You know my opinion, it's unforgivable, the lack of PPE. But other people will say, oh, lots of countries had problems with it. They did their best. They spent a lot of money. And, you know, there'll probably be just about enough to get them over the, well, why did you keep contracting them out to companies that had no experience of providing PPE, etc., etc. They could bullshit and muddy the waters. And it's like, oh, it's not obvious that that was conducive to the death rate spiking or whatever. But those two things, refusing to close the border and discharging COVID patients into care homes, those are criminally negligent things. In my opinion, I don't know what you think, Mike. How can you make a case that either of those things has a justification in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, I can't see how you can. Clearly you can't.
No, I can't, no.
But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, won't we?
We will, yeah. Can you think of can you think of anything else that I have missed that was particularly amusing or interesting in what Cummings was kind of castigating them on?
Not really. I mean, he said lots, didn't he? He spoke about Bojo basically ignoring his cabinet sometimes.
Yeah, it was. I think that was when he was talking about the changes his mind 10 times a day thing. Wasn't it? It was kind of.
Yeah, or wasn't there something about around the time of the second lockdown, or just before? I can't remember now. There was a lot, but I'm sure he was saying something about how Boris was basically just ignoring his ministers, even Hancock was kind of on Cummings' side.
Wow. Well, do you remember? Do you remember that? Do you remember that Johnson was accused? Do you remember? You asked me where this came from. It was the Times, apparently. So the Times ran that story about Johnson missing the first 5 Cobra meetings because he was busy writing a Shakespeare biography to pay off his debts for his divorce. And Cummings didn't come out with that. So we don't know whether that happened or not. But what Cummings said was the reason for him missing it is because he didn't take it seriously. Now, either of those accusations to me is pretty much as serious as the other one.
Well, they can both be true.
Or they could both be true, in which case, I don't know what to say. Okay, Mike, well, I think that's enough for Cummings' testimony anyway. We talked about it quite a while. Very funny, a lot of stuff to go through.
We have rambled on.
Yeah, we probably both agree. Hancock's got some serious thinking to do to save his career. But otherwise, not much before the inquiry, I guess. Johnson will just try and ride it out the way he does every one of his disgraces. Speaking of disgraces, did you hear that Johnson's got married in secret?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit cynical timing again. But do you know what somebody said about him, Mike? Because initially, he said that they were going to get married in 2022, right? By the way, this is just a completely cynical speculation. Turn your cynicometer up to 110, and I'm going to say this speculation. I read, and it didn't occur to me before, what if Boris Johnson briefed the newspapers he was getting married next year because next year is when the COVID inquiry starts, and he could kind of try and distract attention from it. And obviously it's closer to an election, give him a little poll boost, whatever. But the main thing that was brought up was in the small print of when you're married with someone, as opposed to just being in a relationship with them, you are legally allowed to not testify against them in court. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason they got married, but it's an interesting thought, isn't it? Because we were just talking.
You know what? I hadn't thought about that.
No,
I know that to be true. I did know that to be true, but
right.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Because you imagine both of them will have to speak at the inquiry.
Definitely. So, yeah. Okay. All right. I can subscribe to a bit of that. To be honest.
You see why I said it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if of course you'd have to be hyper cynical, but if someone was to present that argument to me, I'd find it very hard to write off what they're saying as purely cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, right?
It's very compelling narrative, I found. So yeah, we're just leaving that out there. Leaving it out there. In other news related to lockdown, it's not looking good on the Indian variant, people. Apparently it's spread all over the country, and we are now back at the situation where cases and hospital admissions and deaths are all increasing, and apparently the R rate is over 1. Now, we know that most people over the age of 30 have now had at least one vaccination. So this is probably, not certainly, but probably being driven by younger people. So, or rather, and also the vaccine skeptic idiots. So can we please, if you know someone like that, tell them to stop being a bellend, cover their face, wash their hands, because it's not looking good. Now, I don't know whether it would be serious enough to lead to a lockdown in the autumn, because presumably by then we'll have vaccinated the whole population. But, you know, why? The question is, Mike, quick question, should we extend the lockdown easing? Should it still happen on June 21st?
Yes.
You think it should?
Yeah.
On what basis?
I can't fucking take it.
Well, I've got to be honest, I am going to a festival in mid-August, so June 21st would be better, but I'd rather they delay it for 3 weeks if needed for 3 weeks, just as long as the extension doesn't.
3 weeks is all right by you.
It is, yeah, because that's not going to ruin anyone's festival. If a festival was this close to the unlocking, it wouldn't be going ahead anyway. So
yeah,
because we're only talking about mass events, aren't we? Effectively,
yeah. Look, I think you look at these decisions; they have to be made on the numbers. You have to look at the numbers and decide. And I don't know enough about them.
Well, like I say, the numbers are all going in the wrong direction. But you're right. I think they said they're making a decision probably the end of next week. I think they said 2 weeks before the scheduled date. They will look at it again and make a decision. So people, please be careful in the interim. We don't want another potential lockdown in the autumn if it comes to that. I don't know. It will.
Do you think the Euros will play a part?
Good question. That's a fair point, especially because younger people will probably be going to the Euros. It could well do. It's a good question. I don't think they're going to cancel or stop people from going, but you're right. It could easily. It could be just like how Eat Out to Help Out. It could have that kind of impact. No, it's a fair point. Anything else, Mike, to add, or are we wrapping it up tonight?
I think we need to wrap that up, don't we? We've been rabbiting on for long enough now. So
especially because you can see the sun is setting so much that you can hardly see my face now.
Yeah. Blessing or a curse? We'll let you decide. No. But no, I think all really left to say is make sure you like this video, whether you liked it or not. To be honest, I don't care. It's a direct order. Subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell so you know that we've chucked up another video. Pure golden content. And make sure you interact with us as well. Let us know if you think we've got this whole thing fucking wrong. Tell us.
Particularly if you think there's any other explanation for the two things we said. If you think there's another third explanation for the Johnson locking down the borders or Hancock discharging diseased people into care homes, let us know. We are by no means oracles.
Yeah, we're happy to, not just accept criticism, but we're also interested in what you think. So, tell us what you think. Let us know if you think we've kind of misread a situation, or we've left something out, or you've got a different take on something that is interesting, and we should hear it. Let us know. Make sure you share this as well. Share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues, whatever, so that they can hear and listen to us and watch us chat shit as well. So, indeed.
And on that note, until next time, everybody, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.